Welcome to the Adtech podcast from ExchangeWire, bringing you the latest news and views from the world of Adtech, media and marketing.
Welcome to the Adtech podcast, and I am Grania Reid, ExchangeWire's Head of Marketing and your host for today, and I'm delighted to be joined this week by Rachel Smith, ExchangeWire CEO. Rachel, how are you?
Very well, thank you, G. Delighted to be on the podcast.
Great to have you. And alongside Rachel, we have Lindsay Roundtree, ExchangeWire COO. Lindsay, how are things?
Very well, thank you. Also delighted to be here.
Amazing. Well, this week we have two big news stories to unpack, and one of them is Meta quietly testing an AI-powered shopping research tool, as well as the Netflix news that they've exited the Warner Brothers race. So let's dive into it. First up is Meta, who are piloting a shopping research feature inside its Meta AI chatbot, aiming to rival similar commerce tools emerging in ChatGPT and Google Gemini. The test, available to some US users via the Meta AI web interface, lets people ask for product suggestions and returns a carousel of items where images, brands, websites, and price, plus brief bullet point rationales. Meta says the tool is experimental, but aligns with Mark Zuckerberg's ambition to build personal superintelligence that leverages users' history, interests, and social graph. Recommendations can be tailored by inferred location and gender, and currently click out to merchants rather than supporting in-chat checkouts. So, Rachel, I'm going to come to you first on this. And if AI agents become the first touch point for product discovery, how do you think retail media, search and social strategies adapt to stay viable with these assisted experiences?
So I think firstly, I think this is super interesting. It's sort of where I think lots of people have expected some kind of AI chat function or AI search function to go. You know, it was only a matter of time before there was some shoppable experience available within an AI search or an AI chat environment. So I'm not surprised by this experiment. And weirdly, I was just talking about this news story earlier on today with a friend of mine at the gym who is a marketer for a big luxury makeup brand. And she's like, oh, I didn't know Meta were doing that. And I said, well, it's only an experiment in the US. She's like, that's super interesting for a brand like us because we get still so much sales traffic through Meta, and we're really highly experimental when it comes to anything that's happening in AI search or AI chat. And it would be really interesting to know how that works from a brand point of view. So I think she will be not alone. I think a lot of brands will find it quite exciting because I think that they'll think of it as a way to get even closer to their customers. I think the big implications though here is what it does for, as you've mentioned, G, in your question, what it does for a retail media marketplace and a shoppable retail media environment. And then the interesting element here as well is that it's not necessarily going to, what's the shopping experience going to be like? You know, it's not necessarily a fully sort of integrated merchant experience in the chat function. Instead, it's going to push consumers out to retailers' websites, which makes it a little different to the experience that we're probably all used to in social media platforms at the moment, which are often merchant within the social media environment led. So I think that's what's going to be very interesting. I think it provides advertisers and brands with plenty of opportunity to experiment with, AI chat and search environments. I think that it's also signals a strategic move in the way that we start to see search and social, right? So search is no longer going to be answer-based. You know, we're not necessarily using search engines to answer our queries anymore. I think everybody's using AI chats and AI functions to do that. So I think this takes that one step further in a shoppable environment. So it's kind of like shoppable commerce, but in an AI chat environment. And so, yeah, I think it's super interesting. And I think strategically it's going to cause, it should cause social media platforms to think about this differently and to think about what they would do to compete with Meta, and also anyone that's running a search engine, i.e. Google, is, going to be experimenting with this themselves already, probably within their own AI environments and any other environment that they can influence from an AI point of view.
Amazing. And Lindsay, what are your thoughts on this, on the move that we're seeing Meta make?
I think that I agree with Rachel. I think it opens up a whole new sphere of influence for brands to be able to kind of get in front of their audience in a sort of different way. And, we touched upon this last week briefly with the Walmart news that they were seeing a 35% increase in basket size where people had used their AI tool, their Agentic AI chatbot to ask product queries. And so you can see already that kind of like just the existence of that within the retailer itself makes a huge difference and actually kind of helps people kind of go to purchase more quickly. They're able to kind of find out what they need within the platform itself rather than go off somewhere else. I think that if Meta can kind of bring that all into one place and, assuming they're able to then kind of, I don't know how they would bring that into Instagram or Facebook, for example, rather than just their AI tool, but it does mark this new wave of kind of what AI actually looks like. And I think Bok is using the term sponsored intelligence, Brian O'Kelly using the term sponsored intelligence. I think that feeds into this quite well in terms of kind of what does this look like, how can brands make use of it, because arguably agentic AI chatbots represent huge opportunity within retail media networks. Like there's a lot of opportunity there. How will they fit into this environment? You could also argue it changes everything because it changes SEO. It changes from a brand perspective. It changes SEO from search engine optimization to kind of like almost like geo optimization. And there's lots of kind of opportunities for integration from retail media. There's lots of opportunity for social. Kind of it changes the way that a brand would look at social. We're already seeing brands kind of look at social very, very differently from a kind of a content creator perspective. I think that being able to tie that in with actually being able to find new ways of completing purchase or find new ways of communicating with different parts of the funnel, this ties into it really well. And it's again a sort of marked shift towards agentic commerce. And if Meta can get this right within their AI platform and then use that to potentially bring in, I personally, when I use Instagram, I can't complete a purchase on Instagram because I don't like the experience. I don't like the browser within the social platform, and also none of my details are saved there, so I'd have to go in and put all my details in, and I can't be arsed with that. So I will always exit it. But if there was a way of kind of what are ways of making me stay in that environment, this could be one of them. And I think they're probably thinking about that, and like what are all the ways that I can try to keep a user within my platform for as long as possible. Arguably, they might have to, as what you pointed out, Rachel, they'll have to kind of leave the platform to be able to complete the purchase at this stage. But it feels like this is another way of them trying to work out how can I retain people in my platform, get even more data for as long as possible. Ideally, the entire purchase cycle or the entire at least research cycle. It gives me so much more leverage to be able to do more with that consumer, and also so much more leverage to be able to kind of to provide a really strong retail offering for brands.
And that's really interesting, Lindsay, because I can't stand that Instagram purchasing experience either, and it's mostly because I just find it clunky. And the same thing, my details aren't saved. I don't use Shopify or whatever it is that it commonly links to, and I just I also don't trust it. I still want to make a purchase on a brand's website. I'd rather do that. So the stage at which this chatbot search function is at would actually suit me. I'd prefer that. But I expect it's not really where Meta is going with this. I expect actually what Meta want to do is provide a complete merchant experience within that chat environment. So it'll be interesting to see how they can do that. And I think what they're aiming for is really going beyond that targeting level to the decision-making level. So what they want to do is, as you said, collect as much data as possible on you, but not just on your interest and your likes and your intent, but on what you are actually willing to spend money on. And then they want to insert themselves at that decisioning layer and be able to provide probably the infrastructure to that, if that's possible. Or indeed, that's what we maybe expect that agentic commerce will look like. You'll have these agents. We'll all have an agent that we send off to go and do specific shopping related tasks for us. I want to book a flight to Singapore on between these dates and those dates, and and I also want to go via somewhere else. Can you please sort that out for me? And plus, here are all my banking details. And as soon as I give you approval, can you make the purchase, or can you complete the purchase for me? So maybe it's a precursor to that. I don't know.
In terms of traditional ad spend and comments from both of you there and saying this is changing everything, how do you think that these AI driven recommendations can change competition if visibility will then maybe depend more on model training data than traditional ad spends? Lindsay, maybe just go to you on this one.
I think that's it's a good question. I think that there's going to be a big shift. I think that, certainly if I were a brand right now, I'm looking at, there's so many different options out there for me in terms of where my money goes. And so if someone like Meta can come to me with a credible, viable option, and again, it depends so much on kind of where my test budgets are going. Do I have money do I have ad spend to go into kind of innovation, and do I understand Agentic yet? Do I understand kind of where I want that budget to go? Is this almost too much? And am I giving Meta too much power? We talked about this a few weeks ago with Amazon, and Amazon opening up its Agentic offering, trying to again provide a complete closed loop. But as a retailer, what I'm giving Amazon is basically I'm putting my money into a complete black box. Am I doing the same thing with Meta? So Meta have all this data. Do I get any of it back? Do I have an understanding of how people are searching, what they're looking for, what they then go and do, like what control? Because this could pit Meta against Amazon in a kind of closed loop retail perspective quite interestingly. It will help Meta out massively if Meta give the retailers data, and kind of from a sort of like a sandbox testing perspective, the more that the brand gets out of it, the more likely they're going to want to be to invest in it. I don't know if that really answers your question. I went on a ramble, but hopefully you get what I was going with.
Yeah, because I think the key thing there, right, is data and data availability. If Meta were to make some of that data available to brands, then they're far more likely to invest in that environment. I mean, I think that's what brands at the moment struggle with in other commerce media and retail media environments, is that the data isn't, typically readily available, not unless they've brought their own data with them, and maybe that's been matched with other data sources, by virtue of using other particular tools, specific tech tools that they can activate with in that environment. But otherwise, the data return is kind of limited, and that's what the problem is. And then that means that Amazon, and in fact any other commerce media environment or retail media environment, just become another walled garden. But who knows whether that's what Facebook would be willing to do, because all of these tech platforms and big dominant players tend to prefer to create very closed environments. And I guess the sell will be to brands and advertisers, this could be a closed loop measurement environment, because we can actually prove the value of the money that you're spending with us on these ad placements in this particular context or in this particular environment, whether that's a chat environment or otherwise. So I don't know. There's loads of things that could be really interesting to come out of this, but it is absolutely the next step that you would expect to see. We have to all be expecting to see that, some kind of shoppable environment in an chatbot or an AI search environment.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see if we get access to it, what that looks like. Excellent. Well, yeah, let's move on to our next story, which is Netflix withdrawing from its bid for Warner Brothers Discovery, removing the main rival to a proposed $111 billion takeover by Paramount Global and its backer Skydance. The move follows months of speculation about who would consolidate Warner Brothers' valuable HBO, film and streaming assets as the studio struggles with heavy debt and intense competition. A combined Warner Brother Paramount entity would unite Paramount Plus, Max, and vast film and TV libraries, creating a heavyweight rival to Disney and Netflix in both content and distribution. Regulators in the US and beyond will now scrutinise the implications for competition, creators, and consumers. So yeah, we've been talking about this for months and months and months. So what do you think of this now? Rachel, big news.
big news that doesn't surprise me. Netflix
Yep.
eventually decided the price tag was too much, and you can't blame them really. Like, at the end of the day, what is it that they're buying? More content and back catalogue. For sure, it's an impressive back catalogue and it's good quality content. But at that price, couldn't they just continue investing that into making their own? And they're in the business of that themselves. So I wonder if this will be a bit of a turning point in the business model for streamers. Like, it's obviously been a battle to see who can rise to the top of the of the preferences in the household in terms of what streaming what streaming platforms you subscribe to. But although maybe from a Netflix point of view, they thought if they could get this all wrapped up, that would just give them such a compelling offer, they'd really be at the top of the food chain. But even without Paramount, they've still got a really compelling offering, and they're right to pull out, in my opinion. And who knows whether it would have gotten through competition watchdogs in the US as well, because it would have been an incredibly large wrap up of contents. And how would it have been seen from a competition standpoint? I think that the existing deal has still got a way to go to get through that. In any case, I think there'll be competition watchdog eyes on them. And it doesn't surprise me. I mean, I think if I was Netflix, I'd just think, well, it would have been nice to have, but not at that price. And I've still got a really compelling offering and great content, and I'll just use that money to invest into continuing to make really good quality content.
Yeah, absolutely. Lindsay, any thoughts on this?
I'm delighted for Netflix. At first, I wanted them to obviously be able to get this, because it would have created a very, very different environment and ecosystem for streaming. But now that they haven't got it, it feels like they purposely bumped the price up and purposely kind of went into a battle just to make the Ellisons and make Paramount pay even more. Which, if that's what was going on, absolutely bloody hilarious. And they get $2.8 billion that Paramount have agreed to pay in termination fees. So Netflix's balance sheet comes out pretty well out of this. And also, what's going to be created in this new, it's like a Frankenstack of streamers of different platforms that are a mix of streaming, that are a mix of cable, that are a mix of, I don't know what's going on. It's gonna be really, really messy. Like, when you look at the reports of some of the people that have worked for some of these companies, they're like, oh my God, we've got another owner again. Like, that's like the third in 10 years. This is a really horrible environment to be part of. Like, it looks really messy. As it is, in the UK, we've got Discovery Plus / TNT, which is the sports side of things. That, on the 26th of March, I believe, is going to become HBO Max. But of course, if this goes through, then down the line again, that will become something else. And that's just in the UK. In the US, it's even more complicated and even more all over the place. And yeah, Rachel, you're right. The Netflix WBD thing might not have gone through the Competition Commission, but this one will, because obviously the Ellisons are in Trump's back pocket. So that, even though this is again like a huge behemoth and, like I said, a Frankenstack of different platforms and different channels, it will probably go through despite taking a long time. And I think they've paid too high a price for it, personally. If it goes through, they're paying too high a price for it. Loads of debt. Most of the debt is junk as well. So I feel like it's, it couldn't have happened to a nicer bunch of people, to be quite honest with you. Like I said, delighted for Netflix. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see how it actually plays out. And I care most about what happens to John Oliver's Last Week Tonight, because he's always said they can't cancel me because I'm not on cable. I'm a streaming platform. So Trump can't come near me. Well, now he's been bought by Paramount-Skydance. That changes the landscape very, very much. So I want Netflix to buy, because he's going to get cancelled immediately, because Trump won't let him part of that platform. So if that's the case, Netflix can take him, and that just means he's got a home there.
And that's the other thing that Netflix will do with this. It's almost like a fresh budget, right? They've got the money back now, so they can target particular pieces of content, particular series, and try and pick them off. So anything that's not, obviously already contracted to somebody else, but for sure, in an example where somebody gets cancelled, they're in the perfect position to pick that up. So yeah, I don't think, Netflix has still got a great business. I don't think they really needed, Paramount And so I think it's just going to make for a super interesting coming 12 months to see how these streaming players stack up. And don't forget that they've got YouTube hot on their heels as well. So, we're going to start to see the growth of YouTube as a streaming platform and as a competitor to these guys. I know it's still far away from that, but, everyone I know that is young watches YouTube and they watch everything on YouTube. So it's coming at them, whether they like it or not.
100%. I think it was interesting. So RTL and the RTL Ad Alliance are launching I think it's their living room study or living space study. They're launching at the end of this month, where they'll be looking at across 15 European countries and the US and I think China. They're looking at the viewing habits, video viewing habits of like 15,000 people across these markets. And I think that's going to be really interesting to see exactly how viewing habits have changed across different platforms, across the world, effectively, to look at what it looks like. Because I think that might play into the likes of Netflix's and YouTube's hands really well.
Yeah, super interesting. And I guess just on the Warner Brother race, there's obviously a way to go here, but it definitely won't be the last time we're talking about it.
Definitely not.
Definitely not.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for sharing your views and opinions on these two stories this week. Rachel, thanks so much for joining us.
Not at all. My pleasure.
And Lindsay, as always, thank you too.
Thank you.
Amazing. And that's it for the MadTech podcast this week. Tune in next week.
You've been listening to the MadTech podcast, brought to you by ExchangeWire.